Alright, let's talk about lighting in this lesson. Most important thing in architectural images, and that's one issue most people seem to be unable to solve, and they think it's something technical and steal V-Ray, or they download HDRIs like crazy, but it doesn't really help to bring atmosphere in your images, and it doesn't really give you controllable light setups right away. It's still a matter we have to care about by ourselves. So for this exercise, it's really crucial you have default object color 80% gray, because you cannot see light on a blue surface. Not that good, at least. And first of all, we need a room. Let's make it quite big with 5 by 8 meters. So we have something to show, and let's extrude it by, I don't know, 240 maybe, with caps on, and make the normals point inwards, and we need a window. It can be 120 by 80, or maybe let's 80 by 120. And just put it close to the corner and give it some, without caps, some depth. And let's go inside the window and just make some frame in it. If you have problems with creating stuff like that, please watch my other tutorials. I think I explained my head off in how to do it. And we need a camera. We should create that camera in 3D perspective and then switch to top, so we can actually modify the camera. First of all, it should be straight on, otherwise it might look like a snapshot. And we should actually dive inside the camera, clicking on this little icon here. And I don't really want to show the window, that's not the topic. The topic is more how the light is distributing across the surfaces. And I will not show you like any helpers, like using physical sky, which is, in my opinion, more for outside or how to say exteriors. But I will really focus on the standard lights, because that way you have much more control and you really know what's going on and you really know how to change things. Most important thing at first is that when you hit render, there is a light by default, and this light gets deleted as soon as you create your own light source. So we don't need to disable that. If we wanted to, we could do so under the render settings. There's options, so it says disable default light. But what I think is more important is that if you render it again using Command R on Mac, then the windows out here are black. And this is really like kind of frauding your eye. It's really like bad for your reception, you should just take a standard sky, and it should be all white, so that way you really have a feeling for what's going on, or what's supposed to be going on. Our idea is to have light coming across or inside our room. So maybe I make the window a little bigger, grabbing the polygons, not like this, but in point mode. Maybe here it's simpler with all points selectable. so I have much light coming inside. Alright, back to model mode. And the one thing you should start with is always the strongest light source, like the most important light source. And for sun, we take the infinite light. You can use the sunlight tool, which is basically an infinite light with a sun tag, but the infinite light is more pure. You can just define anything by yourself, which is good for learning, in my opinion. And for the sun, we should name it right away. For the sunlight, it's coming in parallel rays, so that way the position doesn't matter. So if I lift it up or if I turn it around, well, the turning is quite important, but if I just move the light source itself, it won't have any effect. But I should, of course, invest quite some time in finding the right angle. So many people have really problems. I just leave the camera now, or I can even lock it, right click and go to protection, and now leave it. And many people have struggle placing the sunlight, and they don't know how to move it, and then they start touching it here and so. But the easiest thing is, if lights are enabled in your view, to look from top down and find the right angle to get inside your window. My window is a little small, so I just grab more points, move it, make it bigger. And that way I can be sure that this ray is coming inside my window. And then I look from this perspective, and all I should do is kind of move the ray down. So I just grab the red thing here and move it downwards. So now I should go back to perspective, get inside the camera, and really should have a look what kind of effect this has. And this is the rendering already, so you don't really see the light coming through because shadows are disabled. So let's use ray traced shadows. And that way, that's like the most important thing that really has something to do with the composition of your final image, is having a really interesting shape for those shadow edges. They should really flow around stuff, like up your walls, along the floor. They shouldn't like get close to any other corners in the geometry of your room. They shouldn't be like just slightly within your frame. They really should this is a compositional element, so you can like play around with this forever, like moving it like there. That's a whole different impression then. Or you could make it, flatter, like so. It's really flat from the angle wise. And once you're happy with that, then you can go on. But I found it good the way it was right at the beginning. Not excellent, but interesting. And like one more advice, if you have stuff going on here, like furniture, then you really should make sure, if you have like, I don't know, a cube or something, then you really should take care that whatever furniture there is, like the sun should have an interesting way of pronouncing the shape of the geometry. These edges can help to give your image depth and actually tell the viewer a lot about the shape of stuff in your room. So if something can bend, use this. If there's some information like there's a kink, then it says there's something in front of something else. You really should stress that with your lighting. Okay, name the sun right away. Every light source should have a distinct name. And you can also go to basic and activate icon color. So if you change the color of your light source, then you can see it right here. So whenever you have the feeling that, well, there's too much warmth in there, you know right away which light sources could be responsible for that. Next is this little icon here, this little arrow gives you access to use temperature, and while 6500 is neutral, you can move it to the left, so when you reduce it you get really warm colors. If you move it to the right you get cold colors. Then this is kind of the spectrum of natural light, so let's just stick with that. But for safety I go to HSV, so I can see my light is around about here, and 36, 37 is a good value in terms of hue. So I made quite good experience with, I found this quite good, and with saturation, yeah, we can still play with that. Alright, that's the sunlight, and as long as you're working, you should keep the shadow ray traced hard, and when you go final you should switch it to area. But there is more you can define about that area. Among details you can set the infinite angle either really low, then you get very sharp edges, only here there's some blurriness, or if you have bad weather, or if you're like striving for a certain atmosphere, then you can make like 5 or something like that, and this looks really washed out. But this can be cool. I can show you just in a second. But now let's use this as the standard sun. And I find it quite often the sun by itself can be, well, it's very important, but it can be a bit boring. So what you can do is you can intensify it, but you should always think about that there are more light sources coming to your scene, and then this might be way too bright. So I just leave it at 100% for now, but I can accompany the sunlight with another sunlight. I just copy it and I use it like I don't know, like it's like a bit of, not a halo, but like an, I don't know if that word exists, aura, like it's the thing around the sun. And if I put this to a higher value, then I have two kind of sunlights over each other. So this is my concrete light, if you want, and this is like the kind of filtered light, like across my window frame. It's kind of bouncing off and it's more washed out, and you could even like play here and make it more saturated. So because if you look at reality, it's not like a computer simulation. There's like different colors going on all over your walls. Just have a look around you, look at the white wall, and you will see there is like more white shades, more yellow shades, red ones, blue ones, and you really should mix colors across the surfaces to get a vivid room. So that's the aura. And usually I only look at one light source at a time. So if I'm fine with that, I add the sun to it, and I still wait with cranking the value, the intensity up here, because there's more coming. Usually I use an area light, which I can call window or daylight if you want. And this gets a cold temperature, and you can really turn this to a blue value because it is mixing up with the yellowish sun anyways. So Start with a strong value and then you can still reduce it if it's too much for your liking. Turn the daylight around, viewing from top, and make sure your mouse is not here but outside this circle, so you can turn it around, hold down shift to make this perfect 180 degrees turn, and put it right within your window frame, but behind your glass. So if there is any glass in here in your model, make sure it doesn't touch the glass. It's there for lighting your room and not for your glass, of course. So move it smaller so it doesn't touch anything. Have a look at it from another side, position it just in here and move it so it fits. So it shouldn't touch anything. This is the window frame and it's way behind it, so it should be okay. Because the area light is just a lot of point lights, so they shouldn't be close to anywhere. And you need to be careful with area lights because they have two ways of distributing their rays. I just render it out. And please have a look at the corners. They get kind of dark and they may change a little when I change the fall off angle from 180 degrees to 0. So you can see they really reach that. I'm not saying you have to disable it right away. In some cases 180 might look good, but you really should consider this value, because if I just move it inwards, you see it makes a dark kind of seam. So if you put it to 0 degrees, then it's way more natural. But in this case, I can leave it to 0, but then use a shadow, an area shadow. I can define it among shadow and set it to a low value because I don't want to invest too much time, and you need a very quick response from your program to actually make decisions. If you have to wait forever each time you render, then it's kind of bad, and this noise doesn't hurt. It's going to get mixed up with other light sources, and you may use textures anyways, and so noise is not a bad thing, just like that. So let's mix it up with the sun. And let's have a look here. We still have some color information. It's not pure white. Let's take the aura in there, and then you see it is getting brighter, especially if you think about we are going to use global illumination later on, and so we really should maybe leave it like this. We can still kind of crank it up in color correction, or we'll see. But I want this kind of halo to be bigger, and let's just try it with 7 and maybe intensify it. Okay, now I do not like the blue too much, so let's reduce it. And we also have some more stuff going on, like you could of course use a second daylight if you want to play. Like in some cases you will find that I just copy pasted that sometimes light is coming more from like this angle, and it should have a slightly different color, like maybe it's even warm again or so. Just to have stuff going on, we can try it. So you can see we have more variation here. Might be a good thing. And it's really crucial that you have these areas in your view, that you really check whether this is too bright, this is of course too dark, there shouldn't be pure white or pure black. So one thing you should consider too is when you have a sky, then it will be in your global illumination, which we'll just activate now. I use low settings, weak smoothing, detail enhancement is not there in recent Cinema 4D versions. I use low sampling again, and a diffuse depth of 5 rays will perfectly do. Yeah, let's leave it like that and just have a view. Look, this is what the sky does. Many people just crank the sky up until they have some light inside the room, but this will be really low contrast and muddy. So see it with daylights turned on. Now it's getting way too bright. Maybe one daylight will do. And you can see it's really bright already. So this is the time when we need to redefine our intensities. And well, that's like the main job about lighting. It's going back and forth all the time. And it's just a very natural thing to do, like redefining all over. I can tell you there won't be like a finished light setup you can use over and over. I mean, you can use it, but it will be pretty far away from like a perfect result. Okay, this is maybe too washed out for some people, but we could leave it. Then if you really want to have the feeling of a strong sunlight coming in your room, then let's use a kind of old school effect like called bouncing. You could argue that for bouncing you have global illumination, but you really want to support that impression, and global illumination by itself is way too uniform. So let's use a bounce light distributing or reflecting the sunlight back to this wall, for example, with a fall off, so it really just touches a few areas here. We can use linear because linear is by 0% at the outside of the globe. So we can use that to kind of support stuff, support like sun. If this appears too mathematical for you because you don't want circles, let's try inverse again. And it really should be just like a hint. Okay, it shouldn't be too obvious, especially not on the floor. So let's move it up. And the good thing about lighting is that no one can really judge it for accuracy. So in my opinion, it is way more important to have a good feeling about it when you see it. It's not a purely mathematical thing. So this is what it looks like in conjunction. It's way too bright, of course. Here it looks really like a disaster, so let's have a look at it again. And you can tell if you look at this wall, it looks much more interesting now, because if I disable the bounce light, this is just uniformly blue and very generic, very boring to look at. And just with that slight bounce light, it helps this scene a lot. So what else can you do? There is at least two more things. For example, you can use a copy of the sunlight and use it for a shine, like for rays. And in this case it is important that you keep the angle of these rays, but you should move it really in front of the window. And this time we're not using a sunlight, but we're using a spotlight, and it should better be a square parallel spot. So this is where it shoots rays from here to there, right inside our window. You can follow those rays here. And again, isolate the light source, have a look at it, what it does, and it kind of spills this light in there. Now you may like it. Lighting is a lot about experimental stuff, but in case this was too strong, you could still switch it to no illumination. So why would you create a light source and disable its illumination, you might ask? But this is very useful if you are just interested in volumetrics. And these are these effects. If you go to visibility, you can make it go longer, and if you increase the brightness among visibility, then you may see a little ray coming in here. Like this. I hope you can see it in the video, and this may be a bit too Disney-like, but you can use it very well dosed, so then it might look quite good. Now in conjunction with anything else. And now you will always have the same problem with like those really spare or blank surfaces, and for that I really like to use caustics. There's like reflecting sunlight to the ceiling and other parts. So let's just make this a wider angle so we can see better. What I'm talking about is I want some shines here, so what I do is I use a spotlight this time, and I place it more or less underneath my window, so this should fake sunlight that is kind of hitting this ledge, or maybe there's a CD-ROM lying around and it's reflecting stuff back. This is really good for making your scene more vivid. Of course, this shouldn't be like this. I can show you what it does. Let's call it caustics. It's faking caustics. It's calculating really fast, and it should have some kind of shadow enabled. So you know those effects, don't you? And if you really want to make this look more interesting, then you should use some noise in the illumination, and this may be it, or you may want to reduce this effect. And if you crank up the brightness, you can reduce its strength, and as usual you should give it some color. Not quite sure which one we're gonna choose. So now you can see that the sunlight consists of, well, first of all, we should tell them all to have an icon color. But you can see that there's not like one stupid sun. There's an aura, an area around it. There's a bounce to it. There are rays coming through the window. There are caustics on the floor, on the ceiling. Maybe a little too strong. And you could think about breaking this up into smaller bits using blockers. And there is daylight in 2 flavors. And especially the caustics may have really undefined shadow edges, so they're really just there. You don't really see them, but you see that the surface is kind of mixed up. Really depends. And I personally do not like this edge. It looks a bit like an arrow, but yeah, we will see. And now you can still refine like your secondary intensity. This is the rays and their reflection, like how much they get like strengthened, so your overall image will get brighter then. And if you want it to be brighter in general, you could also raise the gamma value, but this will lead to a bit more washed out image, and I would rather, you can do that in some cases, but I wouldn't do it now. And then there is well, what's it like in reality? There should be a bit more light coming at this wall. So let's just zoom in a little, and we can also make some light against this wall using I would call it a room light, using an area light, which is called room. And let's not define the color really here, but just first care about the effect. And it should be, I like the fact that it is only going in that direction. It shouldn't stick in the floor. Move it outside our view and make it really weak, because you just want to compensate for stuff. If you look at it all together, then you play around with this value until you're happy. Probably a bit brighter. And if you think this is increasing the light in general, so like, then you can still use a spotlight right there. Lift it up, of course, and have a look at this option. So let's kind of make this bigger, but very low contrast, -50, let's see. So this is really undefined, and again, some color doesn't hurt. And of course this wall should never be brighter than that one. So let's reduce it quite a lot. And I personally don't like the shininess that much. So the visibility of this effect can be largely reduced. In general, I think this scene is a bit too bright, and the corners still look a bit blank, so classically you would use ambient occlusion now. Put it to a middle gray value, and let's have a look in the corners. Depending on what's going on in your scene, you shouldn't use too much of it, because it's kind of making your scene look a bit muddy, and especially for architectural images you don't want to overdo it with that kind of effect. So maybe the bounce is too strong as well, and you can see now I'm already starting to kind of playing around with my setup. I, for example, find the main sun too weak. It should be really burning in there, and maybe even a bit crisper. Of course, you will surely have to touch that light setup again once you have textured everything, and once there's stuff blocking your lights and so on. But that's a bit base here. It's the room light. Alright. And I don't really like this little shadow in here, so I take my daylights, both of them, and just no, we shouldn't do that, but we may want to move it inwards a little, just to see how it behaves in this corners. And now you can judge by yourself. If you want a sharp corner, pull it outside. If you like that bit of a shadow, then you can pull it inwards. Probably a bit better like that. But we shouldn't forget about the caustics, so maybe they're just too weak right now. Or maybe this was a bad idea, making it too soft. And also, yeah, I don't know, it feels a little big and too weak, so we can make this a little sharper. Yeah. Alright, and if this is too gray, then again make this a tad more stronger. And the rest should be a matter of post-production, like the final touches can be done in Photoshop as well. Yep, I hope you liked this tutorial. This should help you a lot with your interior lighting.